I tip my hat to you, Steve, because although through very hard times when every other politician was bending at the knees in voting against the people and trying to make deals with their vote, you stood strong and you voted with the people 100% of the time. So I want to commend you on that, Steve, and I'll hand you over to the crowd.
Well, thank you very much, Tricky, and thanks to the crowd for coming and standing behind TPR for the freedom and the future of Australia. It's a very important thing that we can't ever dismiss and that we need to stand up for every day, not just one time, but in every situation. And now it's even more paramount than ever with government corruption. And as you know, or some of you may not know, I put up a bill called the Triple P Bill. And last year in 2024, I asked before I was elected out of Parliament about the concerns of never having an audit performed on a Queensland budget ever in this state, and they said we've never had one. That alone just goes to show the level of how much carte blanche governments have had, and there's no transparency and accountability to the people whatsoever. It's a shameful and it's a absolutely destructive thing, given the fact that the debt that they were in. You know, today's government measures and policies are directly threatening the lives and livelihoods of people all over the world. And now here in Australia, the legislation is being used to silence the government's critics and to implement policies and measures that are completely and radically transforming this country while restricting and controlling its citizens. And that's what we've got to change. And, you know, the Parliament itself is being bypassed, increasingly silenced, as its powers providing oversight and scrutiny are being taken away all the time. And it's just unbelievable. You know, the country's so-called governing classes offer endless rationalisations and justifications for reducing transparency and accountability to the people while increasing their own power through for the service of just a few of them. You know, the idea of limited governance has become a thing of the past, as the idea of individuals possessing inalienable rights and liberties. And this is all being done gradually and quietly, and people are just copping it. No one's aware of what the radical changes are. It seems to be completely to transform the country's political and economic systems. And at the heart of the transformation has been the revolutionary program of change known as Agenda 21, and I think we all know it. And the second situation is the parties that are governing us. They're the perfect source of making sure that any sort of dissent or any sort of speaking out is silenced, and that's because as soon as like Jared Rennick, as soon as he spoke out, he was ousted from the party and basically labelled a heretic and not to be there, and he's gone. So the party's a perfect system to be able to silence any of the people who speak out. They just simply get voted out, or they get put in the idiot basket, or sovereign citizens, or whatever they want to label them as being non-conformists, and it's just the perfect setup for it. So we've got a lot of work to do, and the chief characteristic of the new normal, I think that I've noticed, is that corporations and NGOs now exert almost as much power and control over us as our own government. Look at the reef, look at our coal industry, look at the electrical industry, look at our electrical, the ranges being torn up and put windmills and these power generation units on there, these wind factories. It's just they've got more say than our own people. And just recently, Barnaby Joyce made a big statement, huge statement, by coming out and telling everybody that he was offered $600,000 to not talk about this. And you've got to ask yourself the question, okay, who was it that offered that money? How is that money going to be paid? How are they going to cover that up so that they couldn't see it? Was it going to be given to which organisation or from which organisation, to which account? And why wasn't there any people in the journalistic side of things? Why weren't the media all over it asking questions? No one said a word. He said it to George Christensen. He come outright in a video. So there's got to be a change, and there's got to be answers that have got to be put forward about how these people are paying all this amount, these big amounts of money to government officials. You can march as much as you want, but you'll never change the fact that the government officials, the government themselves, and the bureaucracy stays the same. Therefore, the corruption is still there. Therefore, the changes that we all stand up against and we hate are still coming. And we can't walk away from that until we walk away from the fact that the two-party system is destroying us, and the party system itself allows for this to continue on. And that's the only way we can walk forward, is to make sure that we understand who's involved in this. There needs to be a think tank put forward so that we can actually look into government corruption and the issues that surround government corruption, who's involved in it, how they're being paid, the common denominators of how it works and how it doesn't work, so that actually us, the people, can work out who is working for us and who is actually being paid to work against us with their own money, or sometimes with overseas money that's probably created through some of these, energy plans and all the rest of it, and also our royalties as well. So we've got a big job ahead of us. This is to stand up in the streets and say, yeah, we don't want immigration, we don't want this, we don't want that. There's only the one common denominator that exists in that, and that's governance, our own governance making those decisions in Parliament, in Canberra, in Queensland, in all the other states. Why hasn't there been? So they said in 2024 there was going to be a review. There was going to be an actual audit of the Queensland budget, and also all the big, large tier one providers that provide billions of dollars worth of services. Were they ever actually provided? Did it ever actually happen? Did the LNP government follow through and do it what was supposed to be done? Because we don't know. We haven't heard back. No one's talking about this. The media certainly aren't talking about it. So, who's really on our side? We're paying for all this, and we're actually getting their own money again used against it. It's just unfathomable. And we continue on doing it. And we are not powerless to stop this. We need to beat it, not by retreating, but by coming together and taking bold action. The goal is to deleverage their control. And to me, this is not left versus right, Labor versus coalition battle. It's freedom versus enslavement battle. And if you can't get that right, we got nothing right. And I firmly believe we will win if we don't give up. But we've got to be strong in our resolve. And I know this needs to happen, and we need to start to support our own independent business models like sole proprietorships, partnerships, family businesses and cooperatives. And we need to support those who run for public office who are not tied to the two-party system or answer to hidden vested interests in foreign NGOs and the corporate sector. The so-called democratic governments and the two-party system have been hijacked by rich billionaire classes. You can tell it. And the powerful NGO foundations think tanks and lobbyists they fund, and they're slashing taxes for them and setting billion-dollar public-private partnerships with them, loading up the taxpayers with mountains of public debt at all levels, and raising taxes on the working poor while simultaneously cutting their services. And all this is leading to steep declines in our well-being. And the wider majority will continue protecting the status quo because the establishment hasn't come for them yet. Well, it's around the corner, and eventually they'll wake up into poverty and say, well, what happened? It couldn't have happened to us, surely. And in the meantime, they ignore the warnings from those who know better or worse and blame them. And society is reaching a breaking point. We know that. That's why we're all here today. The new global corporatocracy will not stop until you own nothing and must rent everything. Yet sheeple citizens keep on voting for the corporate-captured mainstream parties instead of defining corporations who bankroll the psychopathic politicians that execute the will of private interests. Insanity, as you know, is doing the same thing over and over. We know it, and you're getting asked for different results. Not going to happen. We keep buying the products they give us. It's monopolised by techno elites who will reap over more wealth and more power from humanity's descent, just as they've been doing since the Industrial Revolution. As humanity goes down, profits go up. Our public institutions no longer serve people and representative of democracy being made to give away a permanent stakeholder control. And this corruption of our once free and prosperous country is unsustainable and will destroy us all unless we stand up together and say no. Start looking into the backgrounds of what's going on, the situations like Barnaby Joyce, where he's come forward and said it's happening. He's really in the picture. He's semi-low level, not a real big decision maker in the whole scheme of it. given the coalition's stance and where they sit. But they're still offering 600 grand to a bloke like that. So we've got work to do to look into corruption. We've got work to do to make sure that people are not being ripped off, that our taxpaying mums and dads are getting bang for their buck, that our services are what they're supposed to be, and that the politicians are telling the truth and they're held accountable and there's transparency right across the board. Otherwise, we will never win this battle. And there's all the marches you want. We'll never change that until we go and start digging and look at it. Because look at Ireland. You talk about, how many people have come here. 5 million people in Ireland. There's been 1.2 million people go over there that have been taken in by Ireland itself. You imagine the destruction to your life, to what the pressure is on people in areas where all their motels are gone. There's nothing for the homeless. All the money's being diverted to this. It's just an absolutely destructive process, and I think that's the way that they're going to try and basically dehumanise and destruct Western society, decompose it, turn it upside down. And we have an opportunity here in Australia yet to get involved, to be able to fund, stop, and get involved in a think tank that can change this whole trajectory. Tricky's there. We've got people like Tricky standing up. We've got the People's Revolution. All the members of all the people across the country, doesn't matter whether they're in Cairns or any of the major cities like Brisbane, that have the opportunity now to start thinking. And you know what? If we put our money towards a think tank, the amount of money it's cost you to get there today, the amount of money for a couple of days' work every year, considering the amount of tax that you pay, put it together, form a think tank, and start digging. And see what we can find. And I'll tell you what, you want to see people start running for cover, that's the way to do it. And you want to see change, they'll be tucking their tails between their legs that firmly you won't even know, they won't know what hit them. And that's our job to do that.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yep.
So, if we were able to rally the people together and get some cash behind us, who, in your opinion, would you put at the spearhead of this thing to start these investigations and start digging into these guys' backgrounds and all of these communications? What would you recommend?
Well, look, there's a whole host of people that we could look at doing things with, Tricky. There may be some high-profile people, but it's not all about just high-profile people. There's a lot of smarter people than some of us guys that actually know what's going on in the background now. And I think once we put up our hand and say that we want to do this, there'd be people stepping forward to try and take over and try and show us the way on how to do this. And I'm sure there's a lot of wronged public services servants out there. Dr. Marcus Smith, and I'm not saying that he would do this, but he was a chief economist. And, blokes like him, they understand how these whole governments work. And Marcus Smith, a great guy, like I said, a doctor in economics, worked for the government for over 30 years, is now a guy that works at a bottle exchange area, counting bottles all day. That's what he does, because he was outed in the situation where he tried to put stuff forward to the government to tell them they were going in the wrong direction, and they basically cancelled him. So people like him are out there that have got a lot of smarts as far as how the government works and the internal processes are, and they would be ideal to be able to head up an operation like this, Trick. And I think blokes like him they'd relish the opportunity to do it, given the fact of how they've been treated over time and what they know.
Interesting. Let's keep this chat going in the next coming weeks, Steve. Because I think it's time that we actually get the people together and try something like this. We haven't tried this before. We haven't created a publicly driven private investigation using public funds. We don't want the government's money because then it won't go anywhere. We have to fund this ourselves, put good people at the spearhead, and see what we can come up with. But Steve, I also want to know, mate, if your own personal thoughts, do you think that we can still use the political system to our advantage, and how best do you think in a game where the majors have it locked down, how do you think we can get some penetration in there?
Well, for starters, it's always about making sure we hold everyone accountable. And there's so many people out there now. It's so broad. The people that understand what's going on. Yep, the political system's there. The party's system has let us down. Like I said, it's so easy to be able to oust people from that. But the actual system itself, it does make way for good things to happen. there are good things that happen inside it as well. Like there are a lot of people support it, but there are things in there that are just rotten to the core, and it's now come to a point where the general population are under so much pressure that they can't afford anything. There's no hope. Their future's starting to basically be taken before their eyes. Every single thing you touch is illegal. Everything's been given the government red light. So you can't do this, you can't do that. You're taxed on this, you're taxed on that. You absolutely. It's a very frustrating process whereby we're being cornered. And I think at the outset, we just need to start going and looking and find out what's going on, what's happening behind the scenes, and who's driving this. And then I think we need to start pulling these people out and saying, where were you on this day? Where's the money going? Where did you get paid? Is there a situation like? Is there situations like Barnaby Joyce happening? If he's coming out forward like this, how many other people are getting asked for money? How many other people, different, even in my electorate, things go up by $40 million in one quote. Like, they've got to be able to rein that sort of stuff in. It might be, if that's only happening in one little area, what's happening across the country on the federal level? This was in Morani when I was there. Hundreds of millions of dollars that you just got to ask yourself why. Some of these children's programs, I know one particular program, every year it goes up an increment of a round figure of $10 million. So from 2018 to 2020, it's like, there's $60 million every year, another $10 million increment. There's no checks and balances. No one does any audits on it. No one sees what goes on. There's hardly even a document published to show you the outcome. Is there recidivist offenders? Is there women? Is there young girls or young men involved? How many people are actually, institutionalised? How many people are actually turned back and have made a go of it? We don't know. But the system is broken as far as what they've got in place. They always use spend as the winning thing. We don't actually see, we saved this much. When have you ever last seen, we saved this much? We spent billions of dollars, but they never give you a breakdown on anything tricky. They never tell you what's going on. So you always think, look at all this money diverted to it. Is it really hitting the mark? That's the problem. We don't know. But the system itself needs an overhaul, needs to be looked at. There needs to be more audits. There needs to be external audits on what goes on, not government funded. We want to know, we'll tell you what you want to hear audits. Actual drill down, dig deep to know what's going on, what's happening behind the scenes, audits that are honest and transferable and transparent and accountable, that you can actually see hard, cold figures and facts of what they've achieved and what they haven't achieved. And there's a lot of white elephants going around. Look at the hydrogen project down at Gladstone. What happened there? We just built a whole Rookwood Weir project for that, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of pipeline and everything. Well, we didn't build a pump system to pump it all back to where the weir come from. It only went one way. You got to ask yourself the question, why? And there's a way of doing that. And I think, like I said, there's people out there with boffins out there that have been cancelled out of the system that would be perfect to head this roll-up trick. And I think the quicker we do it, the more we put towards it. Is, you'll be marching in the street once you start finding out what's going on. And I'll tell you, there'll be other people running in the opposite direction. And that's exactly what I think the country needs.
Yeah, a lot. Check. I like the sounds of that, mate. Just as fortune has it, I was actually introduced to a woman named Shalini yesterday evening, and she has spent a lot of time within the government doing audit process investigations. She had to leave. She was that disgusted with what she was finding, she had to leave. So it's interesting how the universe works at times. Myself and yourself have just started discussing this angle, and all of a sudden Shalini drops into my lap. So it's a very interesting process. I'm looking forward to getting this thing underway. I'll be in touch with the community going forwards and let them know what we got going. Steve, I've got one more serious question for you. When's our next beer?
Can't be soon enough. But the point enough, we'll put our beers up. We'll lift our beers up when we put our pencils down, mate. We've got too much work to do before that. And I'll tell you something, that lady, Cellini, there'd be another 150 of her all waiting in the row, all waiting to jump on board to give their story. Don't worry, mate, because we're all living on the same ship, the same sinking ship. And I'll tell you, these people too, they want to get their stories out because they're sick of it. It makes them sick to the throat, and then they realise why they're having to do it so hard and what their children are about to experience and what they're bringing their children into. So they've got a vested interest in stepping forward and making sure we hold these people to account.
Thanks for your input today, Steve. I'll let you go there. Thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks for all your hard work, Tricky, and thank you to the TPRP. I hope we can get together. We've got a lot of work to do, and we won't be backing off anytime soon.
Sounds like a plan to me, but I'm only coming up for sharing a beer, by the way. See ya.
See ya.